Hey everyone, AJ here for the Mighty Gluestick channel, bringing you fantastical fictional lore from the worlds of role-playing games. Today I'm bringing you lots of info on Kyuss, pronounced Kyuss, although some people say Kyuss, it's actually Kyuss. Kyuss is actually a Lord of Destruction, so certainly deserves to be included in this series. Also, Kyuss has been requested topic from viewers and is now surfacing on my extensive request list. Plus, I've always been curious about him, and this is an excuse for me to learn. So, who is Kyuss? Why is he important? How does he fit into your game, should you choose to include him? He is a demigod concerned with the creation and mastery of the undead, known as the Bone Master, the Worm God, the worm that walks, and the herald of the Age of Worms. His symbol is a skull erupting with writhing green worms. The Age of Worms is the second adventure path published for the Dungeons & Dragons role-playing game, and it can be found in over 12 installments from July 2005 through June 2006 in Dungeon magazine, a campaign designed to take player characters from 1st to 20th level. I happen to have every single one of those issues. Good reading, I can tell you. The Sons of Kyuss, later referred to as the Spawn of Kyuss, were an iconic monster in the Dungeons & Dragons role-playing game before the story of Kyuss was fleshed out. Interestingly enough, Kyuss is described as an evil high priest who created the first of these creatures via a special curse under an instruction from an evil deity. In the adventure Rary the Traitor in 1992, Sons of Kyuss were said to be contained in the necropolis of Unarg, a cursed city of Sulm inhabited by undead. Sulm is an ancient Flan kingdom that occupied much of the Bright Desert in the world of Greyhawk campaign setting, in the days when it was more fertile. So there is an origin of Kyuss in Greyhawk, and the undead in Unarg who were moved or carried even a few yards from the buildings collapsed into inanimate heaps of bone, which is due to their animation being sustained by an ancient curse created long ago by a high priest named Kyuss. In Io's the Evil, published in 1993, the home of the infamous evil priest Kyuss was claimed to have been the Wormcrawl Fissure, a mile-long ravine away from the main body of the Rift Canyon. Still later, in The Scarlet Brotherhood by Sean K. Reynolds, the entry for Matreus Lake said undead such as Sons of Kyuss walk the nearby jungle. The evil demigod is said to have spent time there. So Kyuss gets around, and where he walks, undead are left to linger. In his divine form, Kyuss appears as a towering humanoid, shaped entirely of green Kyuss worms, with two blazing eyes peering from underneath the hood of his ragged cloak. According to the Kyuss sidebar in Dragon number 336, Ecology of the Spawn of Kyuss, the original divine form was a gaunt man with empty eye sockets filled with writhing worms and hands of bare bone. But he has evolved into his appearance of gargantuan worms that walk as his cult grew stronger. So he's also features on the cover of the Elder Evils and is one of the great Elder Evils of the D&D universe. On Greyhawk, the Age of Worms is a series of prophecies about an age of darkness and despair. According to these prophecies, the herald of the Age of Worms is said to be the undead deity Kyuss, the worm god, who is somehow involved with the Eberron triad. Age of Worms develops from a small town of Diamond Lake, leads to intrigue in the Free City, and then on to the mysterious cult that serves as a front to bring about the events leading up to the Age of Worms. As the players encounter the various architects of the plot, they uncover the nature of the coming age and the ultimate masterminds behind it. In the end, they face off against the two primary antagonists, Dragotha, the powerful Dracolich, and his master Kyuss. The entire campaign is divided up into these adventurers. Number 1, the Whispering Cairn, or Khan. A band of would-be adventurers explore a long-lost tomb near Diamond Lake, and they uncover a necromancy conspiracy with local merchants. Number 2, the Three Faces of Evil. The heroes penetrate a tripartite cult operating in secret underneath Dowstone Mine, hoping to merge three unholy deities. The name of Kyuss and the rumours of his worm-eaten dead arise. This one was written by Mike Merles, by the way, in 2005. Well done, Mike. Encounter at Blackwall Keep. While seeking out a sage to shed light on their recent discoveries, the heroes come upon Blackwall Keep, an outpost beset by lizard folk, and a rescue mission ensues. In the Hall of Harsh Reflections, in the enormous Free City, doppelganger assassins lead heroes to an illithid dealing in unholy relics. This adventure brings us to the greater doppelganger and the octopin and mirror mazes. It's really good, packed full of original stuff. The Champion's Belt, in order to investigate Loris Raknian, the warlord who tried to have them killed, the heroes must enroll in the greatest gladiatorial tournament in the world, the Free City Games, where they end up, what they end up with is an apostle of Kyuss who's come to claim the blood of a champion. In the Gathering of Winds, the heroes return to Diamond Lake to seek out their patron Alastin and present him with all they've learned of the cult of Kyuss and in their activity, where they find that the dragon Ilthane has leveled Alastin's home. They must defeat it and re-enter the Whispering Cairn to seek out the missing wizard. In the Spire of Long Shadows, Alastin's mentor Manzorian tells the heroes of his colleague Balakard, who explored the site of Kyuss's divine apotheosis. When they follow in Balakard's footsteps, the heroes find a site with tales of their own to tell of Kyuss and his blasphemous practices, as well as the alien architect of the Age of Worms. In The Prince of Red Hand, Manzorian tells the heroes to seek out Lashona, a sorcerer's advisors to tyrannical Prince Zeech of Red Hand, and possibly the last person to see Balakard alive. To meet her, however, the heroes must make their way through Prince Zeech's extravagant hall and be on ball and be on their best behaviour. This is there's plenty of danger and adventure in this, though, including the first appearance of the Acid Wraith. In the Library of the Lost Resort, once the heroes meet Lashona, she sends them to the Isle of Last Resort to uncover the location of the phylactery of Kyuss's general, Dracolich Dracotha. A power-hungry cleric of Vector and his minions have the same idea, however, and combat ensues. Kings of the Rift tells that now that the heroes know where to find Dracotha's phylactery, they must get it. This involves infiltrating a huge fortress currently occupied by giants and besieged by dragons. Into the Wormcrawl Fissure, the next adventure, with Dracotha's phylactery secured, the heroes must travel into the deadly Wormcrawl Fissure to reunite Balakard's broken spirit and either destroy or blackmail Kyuss's general Dracolich. Dawn of the New Age, the last adventure. The new spire is complete and Alhasta is under siege from legions of Kyuss's undead minions. The heroes must battle their way through the city and fight back to the darkness before confronting the Worm God himself. So 12 adventures, a really good campaign where the players have to contend with all sorts of villains, challenges and mysteries before they confront the forces of evil and save the world. Kyuss has a whole category of undead that trace their origin back to him. These include the most famous, Avalakia are aberrations who dine on undead flesh, and they're really good bad guy proponents. Brood fiends are an almost headless, grotesque mix of worm, lizard, bat, and ape. The Earth Cancer Centipede is Kyuss's attempt to generate undead useful in sieges. The Eviscerator Beetle is one variety of undead vermin known as the Hounds of Kyuss. Kyuss's Knight is the former generals of Kyuss's armies, and Kyuss's Spawnling is designed to infiltrate lizard folk society. So when you encounter lizard folk, sometimes you can slip Kyuss agents in there and lead the adventurers off into a subplot. The Mastiff of Kyuss are plague-spreading hunters and harbingers of the demigod of worms. The Mind-Killer Scorpions has a knack for seeking out and focusing its attacks on the most intelligent living foe in the area. Scions and mystics and people who can foretell the coming of things are a good target for that. The Overworm is a gargantuan Kyuss worms. Spawn of Kyuss, these are the foot soldiers of the Worm God's legions. They are the most common. They're basically slightly more resilient zombies. The Sword of Kyuss are the elite shock troops of the Worm God's legions, and Olgurstasta is a massive pale yellow maggot. The Worm Nag is Kyuss's most promising spellcasters, and they're fused with, the Worm Naga, not Nag, spellcasters fused with worms. The Worm That Walks is the evil arcane spellcasters who will and personally live on in the worms that devoured the corpse. So the worms that feed on the corpse is actually the component of it that animates them and holds the evil entity which animates the corpse in the first place. So kill the worms, you stop the corpse. The Wormcaller are the lesser priests who helped Kyuss ascend and are rewarded with undeath and a semblance of their former intelligence. The Wormdrake is a fusion of dragon and overworm, combining the worst and most ferocious features of both. And the Worm Swarm are thousands of Kyuss worms banded together. Truly nightmarish. No doubt there are many, many more. For instance, there are most likely lots of aquatic worm spawn that infest and pester the societies of the oceans. In the Forgotten Realms, on the world of Toril, Kyuss has a slightly different origin, but the same general theme. The worm that walks was originally a demigod called Kyuss, who lived in the ancient past as a mortal necromancer and created many aberrant undead creatures that plagued the Underdark particularly. Eventually, Kyuss's wickedness made his contemporaries exile him. During this exile, Kyuss discovered the ruins of a dead civilization on an island near Mystara, known as the Wormcrawl Island by the Elves of Evermeet, and claimed the site as his own, where he ruled as a god king. In the ruins, his followers discovered ancient metal plates which had held terrible secrets, but also confirmed every prophecy he had spoken. Through these inscriptions, Kyuss discovered how to transcend mortality at a terrible price: the lives of his congregation. On one bloody night, he had instructed his priests to slaughter them all, and after that, writhing with necromantic power, Kyuss murdered the priests as well. When he was finished, he attempted transcendence, but was instead fused with the foul ruins, gaining and losing his divinity in one moment. He was neither a god nor a mortal, and he was bound forever to the ruins. However, he was also transformed into something far worse. Some scholars believe that Kyuss had managed to infuse himself with the essence of the far realm-infested star Nihil. Perhaps the ascension was thwarted by Orcus, who tolerates no rivals, or the gods of Death's domain blocked it, or Ao simply refused to let it happen. None know for sure except you, the Dungeon Master, if you include this in your game. After the time of troubles, a coalition of Banites, Baalites and Merkelites uncovered ancient scrolls regarding Kyuss and tried to find Wormcrawl Island in hopes of Kyuss would resurrect their respective gods. A futile quest, as Kyuss is no friend to any other god, or indeed any living entity. In reality, the triad was created by Kyuss's high priest, the silver dragon vampire Lashona, who was utterly devoted to him to the point of love, and an Evolakia who is, in its disguised form, serves as the triad's own leader. So they were doomed from the start. There is a legend in the southern lands, particularly of import, because we now have the Tomb of Annihilation, that Kyuss was an extremely powerful tabaxi and a charismatic prophet in Mesro, who led his cult out of the city in minus 653 Dale Reckoning after persecution from the mainstream followers of Ubtao, or Ubtao, as Chris Perkins himself says it. He wanted to become an obscure deity of the Chultan Peninsula, so Kyuss and his followers founded the religious city of Kaluth-Ma in Kultinga. Again, it is said that cultists discovered ancient metal plates that foretold the future and confirmed every prophecy that Kyuss had ever made. Kyuss was personally visited by his god Jurgil, who gave him a gift of a single green worm and tutored the tabaxi in the ways of necromancy and the metamagic of the archmage Samasta. He began experimenting on the undead, creating such horrors as the Kyuss worm, the Spawn of Kyuss, and the Evolakia. At this time, he gained the services of the red dragon Dragotha, who he transformed into a Dracolet to serve as his general of his undead host. He created a cult around the dogma of life being only temporary and the afterlife a lie, and undeath being the one true path to immortality, a path that many who had lived evil and selfish lives flocked to as a means of escape from the fate the gods had in store for them. While his cultists grew ever more devoted to the apparent truth of his visions, Kyuss tried to fulfill the greatest of his prophecies. He sacrificed powerful magic items and built a magical citadel, the Spire of Long Shadows. At the top of the spire, he created a monolith through which he channeled the terror, adulation, and souls of his entire cult as they were sacrificed and transformed en masse, and Kyuss achieved apotheosis. However, an alliance of Coatls, Eladrin, wild dwarves, and druids trapped him in the Spire of Long Shadows, which prevented him from ascending to true godhood and relegated him to an historical footnote. Once again, it's much like Karsus. It's a tale of ultimate folly, where a mortal has tried to ascend to godhood and failed. You could use Kyuss as a rival to Orcus in all matters of undeath and the central legendary foe in plots and mysteries involving death cults in your game. One thing I like most about Kyuss is the sneaky, undercover, disguised nature of so many of his plots and agents. The use of illusions, doppelgangers, mind control, infiltration and assassination, taking over groups under false pretense and using them to do something they had no intention of doing, essentially victimizing evil people for entirely selfish aims. It's pretty delicious fare for plots, twists, and mysteries in your games. Even if it's not the main storyline, it makes for an awesome recurring side quest, or the background drive for a character in the group, driven to hunt down and exterminate any minion of Kyuss they find, and of course, Kyuss's ultimate goal of killing and ruling over a multiverse of undead most certainly places him among the Lords of Destruction. You could also include Kyuss not as a direct villain or threat, but as an origin and legacy element for magical items, and not necessarily always cursed items. There are weapons that may have necromancy infused in them, but it could be something where necromancers drain life from a foe to empower themselves, or something that destroys the mind of a target, leaving them as a useful thrall, minions to be controlled. Also, you can involve the Nine Hells, as devils are keen to get their hands on the souls of those who seek to subvert or avoid divine judgment for the purpose of, the supposed refuge of undeath. It could even lead to a bizarre situation where the devil is working for the player characters in order to find and destroy a cult of Kyuss. It's a devil, though, so they will leave something very tempting in the mix for the player characters to be drawn to, with the end goal of the character breaking divine law and thus falling into the devil's hit list of souls they can legally entitled to claim for punishment and for fueling their own powers. Also, keep in mind that the mindset of people who live in the worlds of D&D is a bit different to ours, and the idea of a cult of undeath may mean something entirely different to them than it does to us. I mean, how many times have you had a character brought back from the dead in your game? Why was this not automatically seen as an evil abomination by the other characters and non-player characters? Can you see how legions of heroes and villains who thwart death itself would be seen differently by the average D&D person, just going about their daily lives, knowing that coming back from death was an actual thing? Now, if you don't know as much as we do about necromancy and divine power and arcane rituals, what distinctions would they make? If a young adventurer is offered death insurance by a group, organisation, church, guild, or, hey, a secret death cult, how would they know the difference, really? Something to consider. When you ask yourself why there would be such a thing as death cults of folks who think undeath is a great idea, if no hero ever came back from the dead, perhaps it would be a lot easier to tell everyone, hey, undeath is always bad, avoid it at all costs. Otherwise, well, you can understand the confusion. Also, think about how incredibly helpful a well-controlled zombie oxen would be to a farmer, a beast of burden that needs no food, will work all day without rest and can be preserved against rot, and potentially plough field after field. The utility of such a thing will quickly offset any heebie-jeebies the farmer will feel about it being, a zombie ox. It is amazingly fast how such things can become normalized as long as nobody's getting eaten. Food for thought. Kyuss undead typically feature specialized traits such as regeneration, resistance to being turned, swarm abilities, being able to create more undead fairly rapidly from other corpses, or they can be introduced to an area simply by transporting a single worm of Kyuss into a place where other corpses are located. This is it's like the theme of undeath and a plague, and the plague is carried around in the bodies, so much so. It's not undead spirits inhabiting these bodies, it's undead inhabiting worms, which then animate dead flesh. I would certainly include a bit of creativity, because Kyuss certainly was very creative when he was experimenting on these things. I would certainly include a bit of Kyuss lore when running a Tomb of Annihilation campaign, just to expand the background lore of necromancy a bit, but not so much that it becomes a complete distraction from the actual storyline, more like something that can be an optional quest if the campaign concludes successfully and the players want to carry on with the theme of ridding the world of undead threats. Also, on a personal note, I have to look into the dungeon magazines further, because they are just packed full of original monsters. I didn't really realise this before, but yeah, and all of those adventure paths that I was looking at, the writers quite often invent and include new monsters for us to sink our teeth into. or them to sink their teeth into player characters, as the case may be. All right, that's it for this video, everyone. I'll be back again with more soon. It's a long weekend here. Stifling hot weather, so I'm just perched in front of a fan. Not much better to do than watch Netflix and write stuff. So, yeah, keep up the good questions and commentary in the comments down below. Stay tuned for some other projects that I've got coming up. Visit the community tab. There's always a pretty good conversation going on there. And yeah, nice to see you once again. I'll see you again soon.